So my story is a little different from the boardroom story. So I was sitting in my house and I used to get this magazine called Network World from the Silicon Valley. And this was the dot-com time. And at that time, if you remember, Silicon Valley was doing really well. Capital was abundant. People were having exits. People were thriving. There was celebration going on. And I'm sitting in the southern part of the United States in Atlanta reading this magazine, but I was transported to this action. And I felt maybe I need to do something too. So that is how I got started. And I registered my company and I started in telecommunications. Little did I know at that time the evolution of telecom will become part of my journey as well. So when I got started, it was all mostly copper. It was wireline. It was rigid communication network. And with my evolution as an entrepreneur, the industry evolved into what you see today as a 5G network. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how communication is so critical in our industry and in our lives. So everybody is familiar with the phone, especially in India. I grew up over here in Chennai. I'm first generation entrepreneur. My father was faculty in IIT Madras, and I remember having this phone in our house, and it was like the community phone, right? Everybody was sharing it. And fast forward, I came here in 2002 to launch my company in India, and I had actually brought 150 expat engineers from the US to India to launch our first mobile network, the first flip phone that was here in India. So I was part of the inauguration when the mobile phone was rolled out to the common man to empower them for equal opportunity. So that was a moment that I will never forget in my life. Of all the different things I've done, the moment to come back to your own country and to be part of this very epic movement. So let us talk a little bit about where we have come in terms of the network. So when you look at the copper network, which all of us are familiar with, it is reliable, it's rigid, but it's limited. Whereas when you look at the mobile network, which today is a heterogeneous network. What is a heterogeneous network? So when you look at a network, you have Wi-Fi, you have private wireless, you have macro cells, you have micro cells. Why do you need all this? Why do you need the small cells? Why do you need so many towers? Because we as a consumer want more data. We want more data. We want to do things with data. Entrepreneurship is running on communication. There are a lot of things that is running on communication. So let us talk about some fun things. For example, let us just look at a sporting event. So the stadium is completely sold out, right? We want to take selfies. We want to stream memories. We want to interact with each other real time. What goes on behind the network is the planning for the traffic, the planning to make sure your experience as a client, as a consumer, is seamless. So we are working on putting antennas on routers, bringing in cell towers, what they call cows, which is cell site on wheels. So nowadays we bring them on drones. So we bring them so that the network itself gets densified. So even for an event like this, right? I mean, there are more than 8,000 people walking in and out. You don't want your communication failing. So a lot of planning goes behind the support that we need to have a successful network. Let's also talk about another use case of having a strong network. When the storm hits, for example, the power line goes down, the communication line goes down too. So you have first responders who are putting the power line up, but they also have to put the communication line up, because how are you going to make that call to the ambulance? How are you going to make that call to your loved one to say where you are? That is how important data bandwidth and good communication is. So let me talk to you about entrepreneurship. Being an entrepreneur myself, and we are in a conference which is full of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. I come from the TiE ecosystem. I've been part of the ecosystem for 19 plus years, and it has enriched my life beyond what I even imagined. So we always talk about what can we do for entrepreneurs? How can we give back? How can we empower entrepreneurs? Communication can empower entrepreneurs. Let's talk about some use cases from 4G. So we have already moved from 3G, which all of us are very familiar, your Nokia flip phones, you had great voice communication, but now you have moved into your 4G. So what are the applications that came to bear? It's all built by entrepreneurs. Uber, right? There was Uber before 4G. Airbnb. Yes, Airbnb was there. But what was Airbnb? It was a bunch of pictures. Today, Airbnb is an interactive site, right? You can pretty much tour your Airbnb facility. So those are the things that come with better bandwidth. Let's also talk about content that's coming to you. For example, Netflix, entertainment. We have gotten so used to sitting where we are, and content has to come to us. Gig economy. Talk about people getting employed across the board, right? There are so many applications that have started where you can hire whomever you want for how many hours. It is just truly transformative what has happened in the 4G network. Let's talk about, GPS. Do you remember that, when we were driving in India and in the United States, we had what they call the maps, right? So I remember I went to the US when I was 21 and never seen a map, didn't know how to read a map, right? Because in India, when you ask for direction, they say, go right, there's a temple, go left, there's a tree, and then the house is over there. So that's how we grew up. And then you go to the US, and the first thing is you're trying to learn a map. So I come from the generation that still knows what maps are. I don't think my kids would know what a map is. I'm talking about a physical map trying to navigate a direction. GPS came. If you remember, the first generation of GPS was just Google. You put in your address, it gives you the entire, you take a paper, and it was like innovation for us, right? We were immediately looking at, directions that were printed. Before TomTom was one of those generation that came, and then came your GPS, sophisticated GPS system. So cars have it now. You can have it in your own phone, Google Maps. All this is being empowered by communication in the back end. Strong data communication that does not fail you. Similarly, fintech. Fintech has revolutionized itself. Different apps here you have for using, for payments, we've almost become paperless. All of those innovations came in 4G. When 4G came, there were entrepreneurs that were like, okay, let's spring to action. Let us bring these applications and let us, make humanity a better place, make experiences a better place. And also the other thing is telehealth. I think that is remarkable. If you look at the, how is telehealth being used in the remote villages right now? For example, let's say you have a rash and there is just no cure for it, right? The expert doctors that you have in that city or state do not really understand what the causes are. You can actually FaceTime. You can FaceTime to an expert anywhere in the world and be cured. That is 4G, right? I mean, we don't sometimes realize how these things are just happening for us as a consumer, but there are people building networks and enabling communication, and that's something my company has been doing for 20 plus years. So, I live this world. I live in this world of, edge networks, 4G, routers. This is what we do all day, every day. As a consumer and driver, it is probably the most exciting place to be. But, it's never enough, right? We want more. And then comes 5G, right? So 5G is a huge investment globally. Billions of dollars have been invested, but we have kind of come to a little stop right now because the consumer doesn't want to pay more for 5G. But what 5G is going to do for you is it is going to bring what they call a windshield view. So we are walking over here. Many times we are checking our phones, we trip and fall, but we have technology that's coming for you. I have good news. So basically you can actually have, whether you're wearing your sunglasses or your power glasses, you can actually talk and it's going to give you directions. It'll tell you what you're going to do. So you don't have to really worry about typing anymore or any of that. So that's one of the fun things. So we have moved as humanity from point and click, touch and swipe, to where we are to Gen AI and Gemini. So let's talk about digital equity for everybody. So in India, 45% of people do not have any kind of internet access. And I think that was, more pronounced, and awareness was created during the pandemic when there were children in in many places that could not access education. So that is the biggest gap, is to make sure we have digital equity for entire humanity to progress forward. Governments have been investing money. For example, in the United States, there is 21 million people that are unserved or underserved. And so the Biden government has given a grant for $43 billion for us to lay fiber to the remotest areas so that everybody is connected. So being connected and digital access is a fundamental right. So it is not a privilege, but it's a fundamental right for all of humanity. Now let us look at the next phase of, why is it so important, right? Think about electricity. What they're saying is this, what is happening now in terms of digital equity and connectivity is like what happened in the 1930s with electricity, right? There were some percentage that had electricity, some did not. There were naysayers even at that time. Why does everybody need electricity, right? There are naysayers even today. Why do we need to connect a farmhouse that's 15 kilometers inside? Why should we lay fiber? Well, that farmhouse could become a community 15, 20 years from today. So my ask is, no man should be left behind, no person should be left behind. So let's work together to bridge the digital divide. Thank you.